Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a minute, but today I'm bringing you guys a brand new series, kind of just a weekly roundup of what's been going on with the national team, whether it's an American getting fired or just the good and the bad that's going on with American players. Now, I have a buddy who's going to be helping me, and he's going to be with me in a lot of videos moving forward. His name is Josh. You'll meet him in just a second, but with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the video. All right, guys. So before we get into this week's headlines, I'm going to go ahead and let Josh introduce himself since it is the first time he's going to be on this channel. Let him talk about what it is that he does because he'll be a face that you guys should definitely start to get familiar with.
Right. As you said, my name is Josh. You might know me on Instagram or Twitter as Made for US. I have an expertise in dual national outreach and youth national team football. And I like to write articles and help on the channel with player interviews. You'll see a little bit more of that so far. And I definitely would advise you stay tuned.
All right, so the first big headline we're going to go straight for it's Jesse Marsch gets fired from Leeds United. So he was hired to replace Bielsa at the end of last season for Leeds. His main role was just keep Leeds up, don't let them get relegated. He was able to do that on the last day of the season. Now he finds himself in a very similar spot, although expectations have obviously gone up. He had the summer to, kind of instill his tactics and buy the players that he wants. So with that becomes a little more pressure. He's 17th in the league right now with Leeds, only staying up right now over the relegation zone off of goal difference. His team hasn't won a game since pre-World Cup, although they've had the better XG in their last 4 games. And based off their expected points and stuff like that in the Premier League, they're expected to be 12th just off of chances and stuff like that alone. So, his side struggling to score for him. But at the end of the day, Leeds decided it was time to let him go. So he's going to go ahead and be released.
Right. And it was only a matter of time. When you look on paper and statistically, Leeds really haven't been getting the rub of the green as of late. XG has them a lot higher in the table than they actually are. A lot of misfiring up front, particularly when it comes to Patrick Bamford. The statistics show that he should be a lot more prolific this season than he has been. But the truth is, as bizarre it is to fire a manager so soon after the transfer window, seeing him bring in a number of his former players and fellow countrymen, it was really a matter of time. When you see Frank Lampard get the sack earlier this year, and remember when he took over Everton and Jesse took over Leeds last season, narrowly escaping relegation. It felt like that was really all he had hanging on to him. It had been so long since Leeds had gotten a win, and something had to change.
Yeah, so obviously, it's not the greatest situation for Jesse Marsch. It does make him available for the national team, so depending on what people's feelings are on that. But another thing that this situation affects is obviously we have 3 Americans playing on that team. One just made his debut, Weston McKennie. Then you have Aronson and Tyler Adams. So for me, I think Tyler Adams, obviously, he's a great player. He'll fit under most teams' system. Whoever the new coach that comes in, I think he'll be fine. Weston McKennie, he's a great player too. A little less risk for him because if Leeds United they get relegated, he just gets to go back to Juventus. It's the clause in his loan saying they get relegated. The signing doesn't happen. And then obviously you also have Brendan Aronson. Now for me, he's probably the player who's going to be affected the most. Not for good reasons, right? He's been in really bad form right now for Leeds United, and so I think his job's kind of on the line. I can't see him getting into the starting 11 right away under a new head coach.
Right, and you mentioned those 3 Americans there. Even with Jesse gone, there is a 4th. Chris Armas has come in to the coaching staff, and he'll take over as interim manager for the time being. Safe to say, we don't expect that to be a long-term decision. Him joining the coaching staff is a like-for-like switch, if you will. He's part of the Red Bull family as well. Coached as head coach there as well as Toronto. He was part of the Man United coaching staff when former Red Bull coach Ralph Ragnick was there. And we expect to see the style of play to stay fairly the same. And probably will have to wait until a new head coach of Leeds comes in before we see a huge tactical shift enacted.
Right. And I think for Chris Armos, like he was, only hired a few weeks ago to be at Leeds. And I think that was mostly because of his connections with Jesse. So he, plays against his most recent club that he's helped manage, and that's going to be Man United. He's going to play them back to back if he stays that long. I expect him to leave, get out pretty soon. It seems like Jesse was really the only reason why he was there. So whether he maybe goes back to a club in MLS, which I think is more of his level if he wants to be a head coach, or stays around and helps be like an assistant coach in a top 5 league. We'll just have to wait and see. But let's go ahead and get into the next player, and that's going to be Gio Reyna. He has 3 goals in his last 3 games, 68 minutes, right? All 3 of those games he's come off the bench, playing a smaller role, kind of something that people were mad that he couldn't even get at the World Cup. Now he's doing it, getting his limited role, and he's just he's killing it right now in the Bundesliga.
Right, and it's been a lot of controversy under Gio Reyna. Obviously, the infamous quote of "you would be getting limited minutes" from Greg Berhalter going into the World Cup. It's interesting to see so far after the World Cup now, we're still seeing Gio playing a limited role for Dortmund. We know Dortmund really, really has a troubled history with injury-prone players, and they seem to be ushering and very slowly integrating him back into the starting lineup. But for the 3rd game in a row now, he's come off of the bench and scored the final goal of the game. He currently leads Dortmund in goals per 90 this season, and it seems as if he will be a lock for any future national team coach that comes in.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say, right? Like, as long as Berhalter is not the next coach, right, you have to think, you have Gio Reyna on your lineup, or just in the squad. And I feel like based off of first looks, right, Timothy Weah is not going to be the number 1 anymore. Even though he played great under, Greg Berhalter, I'd say he was a really good right wing. And there was obviously that debate for him and Reyna based off of club status, and I feel like just name alone, Reyna's going to kind of have that edge. Whether he's having to play at right wing, any kind of 3 at the top formation, right? So whether we have wingers, which I would assume you do have because you have Pulisic on the left side, or you maybe have kind of like center attacking midfielders behind the striker. I think Reyna's going to be a guy who's going to be able to start. He's on good form, so he's just been doing a really, really good job. But moving over to another guy in the Bundesliga, one of my personal favorite strikers that we have in the pool, and that's going to be Jordan Pefok. So Pefok gets subbed on in the 79th minute for Union Berlin, scores the game winner in the 84th, and temporarily put Union Berlin back on top of the Bundesliga for, 48 hours or so until Bayern Munich regained that first place spot. But, he's helping them get a title run at it. People definitely would have expected it at the beginning of the season, and it's his first time scoring since pre-World Cup. Back in September, I think, was his last goal. So that's definitely good to see from Pefok.
Right, and just as you said, Pefok's form has kind of petered out as the World Cup started to approach in the end of 2022, as has Union Berlin's. They were one of the Cinderella stories of the early season campaign, topping the Bundesliga table until the World Cup came around, and it looked like maybe they would be a Europa League team at best, but here we are again with them in the title race for sure. Jordan Pefok scores a half volley, top corner, great finish. Hope we can see it in the future for the national team.
For sure. And then I'll let you go ahead and talk about your guy. I know you rate him a little more than I do, Luca de la Torre, and what he's been doing over in La Liga.
Right. So it seems as if Luca really, really suits a relegation battle, and that's what Celta were in the beginning of the season. They find themselves a slightly more comfortable position now, and so does Luca de la Torre. We started his 2nd game in a row now for Luca de la Torre and got his 2nd assist in a row. His 3rd game in a row, got his 2nd assist.
I think he's played 11 games, but only started 3, and all 3 starts have been his last 3 games. But the 2 assists in the row thing, that's true.
Right. And it's key to mention they're the 2nd manager of the season as well. So it seems now that there's been a switch in the board level. Luca is the more favored midfielder to have sort of a free roaming role here, different than what it was at Heracles. He's kind of playing as a right midfielder sometimes in defense, and in possession, he's getting an opportunity to almost look like a 10. He had a great flicked assist today or this weekend with his back heel, playing the ball into the box, and it's a kind of confidence that you very rarely get to see when a player's playing in a relegation battle. We do hope that Celta will, as the season progresses, give him the opportunity to not only play more games, but play with a little less weight on his shoulders, because he is a player that is very, very important for U.S. men's national team depth.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Luca de la Torre, he's kind of one of those players I wasn't fully bought in with whenever he was at Eredivisie. But now to see him do it in La Liga, I mean, if he keeps this up, right, becomes a lock-in starter, you'd have to expect he starts getting some more playing time for the USA, because he was a guy who didn't get a single minute in the World Cup. So,
Right.
hopefully he can keep it up. It's hard to say, you have a lock-in starter in La Liga and not give him minutes. So, he keeps that up. He's doing good. And then let's go ahead and talk about another guy who's producing. He hasn't committed to the USA yet, and that's
Right.
Florin Balogun, right? So he got a hat trick on Wednesday. He had another game over the weekend. He didn't score in that game, but got a hat trick on Wednesday, and he's leading all of League One right now in goals with 14. So that's going to be a guy that no matter who the next coach is, right, I think he can instantly win the fans of the national team if he's able to bring in Balogun pretty quick.
Right. Balogun is currently the hottest commodity as far as dual nationals go. He has the eligibility to play for England, Nigeria, and the United States. And him being out on loan from Arsenal right now, and Arsenal just excelling in the Premier League, it's difficult to know exactly what his future next season is going to be. But you imagine if he continues at the trajectory that he has this season, currently being ahead in the goal scoring charts, he has an opportunity to win the golden boot with Kylian Mbappe just getting sidelined with an injury the previous week. Mm-hmm. Big things are definitely in the future for Florin Balogun.
No, for sure. And obviously, him and Musa have that connections of, training in the youth England national team. So hopefully, Musa, he's told us before that he's trying to recruit him. So, hopefully Musa stays in his ear, and, that would be a big pickup for us. So I'd love to have Balogun. And then you want to go ahead and talk about the Fulham boys?
Before we get into that, I do want to mention another player that's out on loan from Arsenal is Austin Trusty. He also got a game-winning goal for Birmingham City and a really important game in the championship. He'll be a really interesting player to look out for when he comes back on loan from Arsenal. It is key to mention that Arsenal just happened to buy Jakub Kiwior, a center back that profiles quite similarly to him in the January window. So exactly where Austin Trusty is going to fit in the grand scheme of things will be interesting to see, but definitely another person to keep an eye on for future national team camps. But as far as Fulham goes, they got a very, 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 very surprising draw against Chelsea. That was the first game where we got to see record-breaking Enzo Fernandez, who was a enormous fee. Mudryk make a second appearance, and plenty of other players that Chelsea have just broken the bank for. And it was Tim Ream in the back who had an outstanding performance along with Anthony Robinson.
Yeah, so as a Chelsea fan, I honestly don't know if it's that surprising. Like, obviously we're struggling, right? And Fulham, they're ahead of Chelsea in the league, and it helps them stay ahead of Chelsea. A 0-0 draw. They kept a clean sheet. Anthony Robinson and Tim Ream. I mean, they're just having great seasons. Obviously, there were some minor rumors kind of saying Anthony Robinson, Jedi was gonna maybe be a replacement for João Cancelo over in Man City. That didn't happen over the winter window. He stays at Fulham, and it looks like he's just going to help keep pushing them. And right now they have a chance in Europe. The FA Cup right now, they've lost teams like Chelsea, Newcastle, Arsenal, a lot of big teams, even Liverpool. They're all out. So there's a chance really for anyone still left in it to go kind of win the FA Cup. They play Sunderland, and then if they beat Sunderland, they go play Leeds, which would get them all the way to the quarterfinals. So, Fulham, they can push, and hopefully somehow Fulham, Jedi, and Ream can go ahead and get into some kind of European competition next season, because they're playing great.
That would certainly be fantastic to see.
Yeah, and then one last guy we want to close it out on. I know he was a guy that you wanted to talk about. One of the only negative kind of things we have to say over the weekend.
Right, and it really depends on the way that you take it. Those that watch January camp or have just been following our more extended players in the pool will know that Alan Soñora has been recently trialing in MLS, looking for a team. There were rumors maybe it would be the Houston Dynamo, maybe NYCFC, and after a safe to say quite mediocre January camp, all things considered, he actually hasn't decided to join the MLS, but rather our neighbors down south in Liga MX. He's joined FC Juarez with his brother, Joel Soñora. It is an interesting decision, to say the least, leaving Independiente, one of the bigger teams in Argentina, where he had a pretty good season. For FC Juarez, game time, you expect will be consistent for him, but you really do question whether or not that's a lateral move now that he's in his mid-20s. It will be interesting to see if he remains in the U.S. men's national team picture.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be interesting. That's going to be a big move for his development, whether it's the right or wrong choice. But that's going to be all the players that I have for this, kind of weekend recap. So I appreciate everyone who's sticking out this far. Josh, thanks for coming onto the channel. Like the video if you like the video, and then go ahead and leave a comment on maybe your favorite headline, or if we missed something and you thought we should have covered it. But yeah, that's going to be the end of the video. So I appreciate you guys for watching.